idea of freedom of speech and freedom of the press, because speech and the press have existed for a long time, and these ideas have been promoted for centuries. But computing is new. It's just 10 years, I think, since a lot of people in Italy began using computers. And the process of identifying the freedoms that go with the use of computers is just beginning. The free software movement says, here are 4 essential human rights that every user of software deserves to have. But most people, even most users of the GNU plus Linux system, have never heard this. So we haven't even got to the first level where people know what freedom is. How are we going to defend it? This is the area where our community needs the most work. You see, during the 90s, as the GNU plus Linux system became popular, many techies discovered that it was powerful and reliable. And of course, you could get it cheap because anybody with a copy could give you a copy. So they started telling other people, here's this powerful, reliable operating system, and it's very cheap to run. And it's cool. And they didn't say it respects your freedom to cooperate. They left that out. And when I pointed this out to people, they would often say, well, let's follow a 2-stage approach. First, let's convince people to use the system, and then we can teach them to appreciate the freedom. Well, maybe this approach would work if we really tried it. But when the people said that to me, it was always an excuse to work on stage 1 and ignore stage 2. And the result is we got this big community in which just a few of us had ever heard the idea of freedom. So the result is nowadays when somebody joins the community, he's probably surrounded by other people who never talk about freedom. They probably never hear the idea that non-free software is antisocial, that it's an evil, that it shouldn't happen, it shouldn't exist. The most basic idea, the reason why this whole thing exists, is forgotten by most of our community. So, if you think that 2-stage approach is a good one, please join me in working on stage 2. We have all these people using the system. We have to teach them now to recognize why it's important. Because today, our community has something that we didn't have before. Enemies. Powerful, rich enemies. And the governments that serve them. Microsoft has announced its intention to try to impede our work. Other companies have not said this, but they're doing it anyway. For instance, the United States has 2 different laws that prohibit various kinds of free software, and it's considering others. One of these laws is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which is not really a copyright law. It's really a technology control law. And what this law says is that if there are technical obstacles to accessing certain data or communicating with certain software, then anything that solves the problem is prohibited. In effect, it gives the publishers the power to write their own copyright regulations. They just implement those restrictions, whatever restrictions they want, as DRM, Digital Restrictions Management, in some software. They say this is the only authorized software. And then whatever software we write to access the same data is illegal. Because you see, if it's free software, people can use it to get around the restrictions because people are free to change it. If you were in the United States, and I hope that you're not going to be in the United States, because as a foreigner in the United States you could be subject to arbitrary imprisonment even legally. One of the few rights you would nominally still have is that if you buy a DVD, you have the right to watch it. But the free software you could use to watch it on your free GNU/Linux system is illegal. It has been censored. The United States practices censorship of software. And I'm sad to say it's illegal in most of Europe as well, because the European Union adopted a directive which is fairly similar. The directive only says that commercial distribution is prohibited. But most countries, when they implemented the directive, they made it nastier than was required, and they prohibited this completely. However, that is something that you could conceivably change. You can organize for the legalization of the non-commercial distribution of DECSS and similar software. What should be illegal is DRM itself. The other law in the United States that prohibits various kinds of free software is patent law. You see, in the US, any kind of computational idea can be patented. A feature can be patented. An algorithm can be patented. A computational technique can be patented. Some aspect of the design of a data structure or a file format can be patented. Well, if you look at a large program, it combines thousands of such ideas. If 10% of the ideas are patented, that means the large program infringes hundreds of patents at once, meaning the developer and the users of the program are facing the risk of hundreds of different lawsuits. This is a crazy system because it subjects all software developers to a threat, and all software users as well. But this is the kind of crazy thing that the US does. And you know, when there's a problem in the United States doesn't try to fix it. Instead, it tries to impose the same problem on the rest of the world. And that's what it's doing. The United States government, along with the mega corporations it obeys, are trying to impose software patents elsewhere in the world, and that includes the European Union. Last July, one attempt was defeated in the European Parliament. They're already planning the next attempt. You are going to have to organize, you're going to have to contribute your time to the campaign against software patents. Take a look at the site ffii.org, which is the principal site of opposition to software patents in the European Union. Join in their campaign. Your help is needed. So today, with these powerful enemies, it's no longer just a matter of developing more software for people to use. Yes, we have to do that. But we also have to organize politically so that we are still permitted to develop more software for people to use. 20 years ago, the question was, were we capable of developing a broad spectrum of free software, of satisfying the public's needs? Today, we have answered that question. The remaining question is, will non-democratic